Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Quilt 101. Today we are going to be talking about our video game quilt.
We want to introduce our new video game quilt.
Woo! We are so excited about this quilt kit. We have been wanting to do this for such a long time and we're so excited to finally be launching it and introducing it to you guys. So this is our video game quilt and it comes in a red and green option. So you can have a green hat and a green shirt to, you know, change things around. So this is a really easy pattern. And so we're thrilled to show you guys how to make this quilt because I know it looks hard, but it is not at all. So let's get started.
All the squares are the exact same size. So we're starting out with a 4.5-inch square. If you get a kit from Quilt 101, everything will come pre-cut and ready to go.
Yes. So the very first thing that you do whenever you get your quilt kit is it will come with an image that'll have it'll come with directions on how to lay out the quilt, and you just lay it out exactly like this. So I just go on the floor, just like an empty space you have in your house, and lay it out on the floor. And so this is kind of what we did with this. We're just making like a little mini version right now. So I have these blocks just laid out in just a pattern. You'll lay it out just like this. So the first thing we are going to do is we are going to stack these rows. Well, actually, first we're going to number these rows. So, and this technique is called chain piecing.
These are the best pins,
Yes.
by the way.
Yes, we were actually just talking about this morning. My mom was like, if there was two notions I couldn't live without, it would be these pins and our Frixion, like the erasable pens. So this is one of those things that is super nice, and it's really nice with a quilt like this because I think there's like what, 22 rows on this, and so it can be hard to keep track of, and so these just do all the hard work for you. So we're going to start by with the first row, and then in the top left corner we're just going to pin the number 1, and this just helps us keep track of where each row belongs. So there's number 1.
Now we're actually doing it backwards for
you
us.
guys. So you guys can see it better.
Yeah, from our direction we'd start here, but for you guys, we're kind of doing it a little bit backwards.
So I'm just pinning just in the top left corner.
My good assistant?
You're such a good assistant, Mom. Thank you. All right, so now that the numbers are on, now we're just gonna take the first square, we're gonna put it on top, and we're just going to stack all of these on top of each other, just like that. So there is row 1, here's row 2, and then we'll just repeat the same thing with these last 2. Okay, so now that those are all stacked, we're gonna now just take these to the sewing machine.
So we've got row 1, 2, and then 3 and 4.
So this is chain piecing, and this will save you so much time. So basically how chain piecing works is you just sew everything like a chain, so everything is connected, and then you'll trim it at the end. So I'll kind of show you how it is. So I have the first square from row 1, and I'm going to take the second one, and we're going to put them right sides together, and so that the sides line up. And just do your best to make sure the edges are all
Now just
straight.
a little tip too with solid fabrics. Usually it doesn't matter. The right side and wrong side look just the same. Sometimes certain manufacturers, you can definitely feel a little bit more softness on one side than the other. So you would just try to be consistent with that, but normally it does not matter.
Yeah. So I have the first 2 squares from the first row down here, right sides together. Very important to have your machine at 1/4 inch the entire time. That is super important to keep your seam allowance consistent the entire time you are making this quilt, or else it throws things off. So we're just gonna take this, and then we're gonna just go, oh, this is going way too slow. Let's turn that speed up a little bit. And we are just gonna sew 1/4 inch down. Now right here, instead of cutting the thread and taking this off, we're just gonna leave it there. We're gonna grab the first square from the second row, and here's the second square, right sides together, So we have the soft sides touching each other, and then I am just gonna put it right through as well. So this is called chain piecing.
Now I'm just lining this up for us so we can
Thank you.
get it going here. This is 4 here.
So as you can tell, I'm not cutting the thread, I'm just keeping it going the entire time. You don't cut the threads until the very end. So here's the last row that we're gonna sew up. And like we mentioned earlier, with your quilt, there's between 20, depending on what size you get, there's between 20 and 25 rows. So you don't want to chain piece all 25 rows at the same time. You just want to do 4 or 5 rows at a time.
Yeah, 4 or 5. I like to do 4 rows. Emily likes to do 5 rows. Just a preference.
Yeah, it's just a preference. Oops, that is not trimming very well. So here's the first like 2 blocks of each of the rows. So now we are going to take this off and we're going to go back up to square one. So we're going to open these up.
Always keeping the numbered row pin on that left hand
on the
corner.
left side.
That's the secret to this
Yes.
whole thing.
So now we're going to work off of the second block. So I'm just going to take the third block, right sides together. I'm going to lay this down onto the second block. And then I'm just going to sew this. So just keeping that same 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm just going to go through. And then when I get to the second piece, you don't trim the threads, leave it right there. I'm going to open up the second row and just add this next block and go, just keep going. I'm going to just turn the speed up just a little bit more. And then you're just gonna keep doing this.
I'm trying to help you.
You're doing
kind
great, Mom.
of more in the way.
You're doing great. And you just keep doing this. Now, what I love about these video game quilts, I grew up with mostly sisters. I do have one brother. So I have so many memories of watching him play video games growing up. And my husband has 3 brothers, so there's 4 boys in his family. And so they grew up playing video games, and even to this day, every time they get together, that's what they do. And so for Christmas, a few years ago, what?
I was just going to hold it up.
Oh.
Okay, see how they're all staying together? Just adding 1 square.
Yeah, thank you. And so one Christmas a few years ago, after I kind of started quilting, I decided to make a quilt for every member of my husband's family. And I believe it was like 8 or 9 quilts in total for his family.
Can you imagine?
But I made a video game quilt for my husband and his brothers, and they take those quilts with them everywhere. So if they're on a road trip coming down here, they always have their video game quilt with them, and my husband still uses his all the time. And so it's one of those quilts that if you're 3 and you like video games, or you're 30 and you like video games, or heck, if you're 50 and you like video games, it's just one of those really fun quilts that everybody loves. All right, so I'm just working on this very last square. All right, and cut that. Now here's where you can kind of see the fun chain piecing, because
Let me hold this in.
You hold that. Let me grab some scissors.
Let's see if you can see it this way. So see how they just all stay lined up.
Yep.
It's a great technique to use.
It is. And now I'm just going to go through with scissors, and I'm going to trim these threads.
Let me do that.
So you want to do that?
Sure.
And so that just separates each of the rows. And then after this, we are going to go to the ironing board. So we will see you over there.
So ironing the rows, let me just show you what we have found to be the best way to iron rows, especially when it's like this. So this one's numbered 1 in the corner. So when it's the row 1 or odd numbers, you always start at the pinned side and you simply iron it out like this. Okay, so there's the first row. Second row, being an even number, you're actually going to start it at the other side. So we're going to flip it around. And there's a reason why we do this. When we go to the next step, we want the seams to nest together, and we'll show you what that means. But this is important for that nesting. So here's an odd. Start at the pinned side and work it to the end. Now when you, oh, hold on. When you iron, you don't want to press super hard, but when you get to the seam part, just give it a little push down. That just gives it a nice, crisp look when you go to the next step.
So now that we have the rows ironed to the correct direction, we're gonna work in sets of 2 now. So we're gonna like connect the rows 1 and 2 together, and we're gonna connect 3 and 4, and so on. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take the first row and that right sides together. I'm gonna flip this over onto row 2. And we're gonna sew along this side, so I'm actually just gonna take this number 2 pin out.
Well, let me just show you something real quick.
Okay.
Let me just show you real quick why we press them in different directions. If you look right here, you can see the bottom seam is going this way, the top seam is going that way. You want to get the lines together right there, if you can see that, and that's called nesting. So all of these intersections, we're going to nest all of those seams together.
Yep, and nesting just allows your blocks to just lie really flat, which is what you want. And so whenever I go and I sew along, I can actually, you can feel whenever it nests, because you can feel the fabric kind of like lie down flatter. So whenever you sew, you just make sure that the fabric is like these like tails are facing the right way. And then I just kind of, as soon as I feel them nest together, I just hold my finger down on that so they don't move. And then as soon as I sew over that, then I move to the next one and make sure they're nice and nested. I just hold down on it, and then I just sew until I'm done with this row. And then you're just gonna repeat this step for all of the rows. So let me just do that. Okay, so we're just gonna repeat this step.
All right, so now that rows 1 and 2 have been joined and 3 and 4 have been joined, now we're going to combine the 2 rows together. So when you initially do the quilt, you'll just do that all the way down. So 1 and 2 together, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and continue all the way down. You will eventually reach the end. There's a lot of rows in this quilt.
It's worth it.
Yes.
It is worth it.
All right, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, and always just leave that pin so you remember what row it is. But anyway, same thing. Now we're going to combine these 2 rows. Same thing. You're going to match up the seams. You want to make sure they nest. And sometimes it helps to just put a pin in there if it helps you to be a little bit more confident about that. But after you're done with this quilt, you will be pretty confident at sewing these
blocks together.
Yes, yes.
All right.
And then when you sew like the 1, 2 to 3, 4, and even in between, it doesn't matter which way you iron those rows. So however it ends up on the ironing board, just press it all in the same direction.
Iron that.
You know what, and Emily just did one more thing that I want to point out to you that I didn't mention. So when you're sewing the rows together, the beginning and the end of the rows, it's good to put just a little back stitch in there because you're going to be kind of working with them a lot, and it just keeps that stitching tight on the end and secures it down. Yeah. So this is done. All you need to do is we're just going to press it. It doesn't matter which way the seam gets pressed, whether it's to this way or this direction. And there you go. You've got the technique for chain piecing. Yep. And that's all this quilt is a lot of laying out on the floor. Make sure your dog or kid doesn't come running through and mess it all up, because that happened to us.
It's true. It's true.
And then you just stack the blocks, chain piece, get your rows together, and that's it. That's about it for this quilt.
It's really simple, and we hope you guys give it a try.
Thanks for joining us.
See ya.